of the heart and the cardiac output. And it is important that you know the dose, 2 to 8 microgram per kg per minute. This is dobutamine. And a similar drug is dopamine. Now, dopamine is also useful in heart failure, but here the dose we have to keep it at 2 to 5 microgram per kg per minute, because if we keep it at this dose, then it acts on the D1 receptors, the dopamine receptors, which is present in the kidney. So it increases the glomerular filtration rate, it will increase the urinary output, and thus it will help to manage the congestive symptoms. It will cause vasodilation of the renal vasculature. Then if the dose is increased to 5 to 10 microgram, instead of 2 to 5, if we give 5 to 10, then what will happen? It will stimulate the beta receptors, which will cause increased cardiac output, keeping the peripheral resistance unchanged. And if we give it greater than 10 microgram per kg, then it stimulates the alpha receptors also. And alpha receptors, you know, are responsible for vasoconstriction. So we need to give dopamine at the dose of preferably 2 to 5 or 5 to 10 microgram per kg per minute, because vasoconstriction will not help further in increasing the cardiac output. So these are dopamine and dobutamine are the important inotropic agents. Now, apart from these two, there are phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors. We had discussed, I think I had mentioned the name of amrinone and milrinone. The first discovered one was amrinone. Now, they are phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors. We know that phosphodiesterase enzyme, it is responsible for the degradation of cyclic AMP, where in the heart, in the blood vessels, also it's present in the bronchial smooth muscles. Now, if the cyclic AMP degradation is inhibited, so there will be accumulation of cyclic AMP, and this increase in the myocardial cyclic AMP along with the influx of calcium, both will increase the inotropic property. So you see, cyclic AMP is responsible for inotropic action as well as vasodilator action, because this increase in cyclic AMP is responsible for vasodilation, and increase in calcium ions is responsible for the contraction. So since it causes inotropic action and vasodilation, so together they are called inodilators. So if you are asked a short note on inodilators, you have to write precisely about these two drugs, amrinone and milrinone. Now, after this amrinone came, it was found that it had certain side effects. Nowadays, in got lost, and it was found that it increases the mortality. So its better congener milrinone, it was discovered. It is more selective for phosphodiesterase 3. Milrinone was more selective and 10 times more potent. And thrombocytopenia, which was a very important and prominent side effect in case of amrinone, was not seen in milrinone. So see, when you prepare for your MCQs also, it is important to know that milrinone and amrinone, milrinone is better because it does not cause thrombocytopenia. Okay, This is about the cardiac inotrope. So if you're asked to write about cardiac inotropes, you have to write about the glycosides. You have to write about the direct aggregator like dobutamine, dopamine, and you have to write about the phosphodiesters. Now coming to the other vasodilators. The other vasodilators are, we have discussed already, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, ACE inhibitors. Now in heart failure, it has been found that ACE inhibitors, they improve the mortality, morbidity, the exercise tolerance, the left ventricular ejection fraction. So drugs like captopril, lisinopril, enalapril, ramipril, they have a role to play in heart failure. They'll reduce the load, the afterload reduction takes place. So they act as a vasodilator. So you see, if you are asked, like I had said, the therapeutic status question, you can be asked the therapeutic status of ACE inhibitors in heart failure. So you have to write how ACE inhibitors, they have a role to play in reducing the formation of angiotensin II, because ACE is responsible for the conversion of angiotensin 1 to 2, and by giving ACE inhibitors, you are reducing the formation of angiotensin II. So what are you inhibiting? You are inhibiting the formation or secretion of aldosterone. You are inhibiting the further ADH secretion. You are inhibiting the aldosterone induced salt and water retention. You are inhibiting vasoconstriction, which is a function of angiotensin II. You are inhibiting cardiac remodeling, which is also a function of angiotensin II. So ACE inhibitors, they overall they have a beneficial role in congestive heart failure. So this is just a recapitulation, this flowchart of what has already been discussed in the drugs acting on the renin-angiotensin system. So remember this flowchart. This flowchart, it comes time and again when you whenever a topic of ACE inhibitors are taken, you have to remember this, that angiotensinogen gets converted to angiotensin 1, then angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 is responsible for vasoconstriction and aldosterone secretion. This aldosterone is responsible for salt and water retention, and vasoconstriction, you know, will obviously increase the vascular resistance. So overall, there will be increase in the blood pressure and cardiac remodeling. So angiotensin converting enzyme, they help in reducing the preload, afterload, and reduce the aldosterone secretion and cardiac remodeling. So I will not repeat the adverse effects of congestive heart failure, ACE inhibitors. You already know dry cough, hyperkalemia, angioedema, fetal toxicity. Now it is important because there can be a problem given to you, that a patient was suffering from heart failure and he was given say ACE inhibitors like say captopril, and he was also given a diuretic, spironolactone. Is this combination rational? You can be asked. Comment on this. So it's important for you that to know that okay, ACE inhibitors, they are useful in heart failure. Diuretics are also useful in heart failure because diuretics will relieve the congestive symptoms. ACE inhibitors will reduce the preload and afterload. But when this combination is given, we have to keep in mind the side effects. What side effect in this case? The side effect is hyperkalemia, because ACE inhibitors cause hyperkalemia, and potassium sparing diuretics like spironolactone, they will also help to conserve potassium and increase the potassium levels. So there is chance of dangerous hyperkalemia which can be fatal. So you should be able to explain this. So that is why whenever AC inhibitors are being discussed, we always hint or we try to always brush up the side effects. Similarly, hyperkalemia is also a side effect in angiotensin receptor blockers. So the same scenario can be given to you with ARBs plus potassium sparing diuretics. So ARBs are still better because they don't have this ACE induced. The other vasodilators which can be useful for congestive heart failure are isosorbide dinitrate, hydralazine, okay, then calcium channel blockers like amlodipine, alpha blockers like prazosin, okay, they can also be used in heart failure. Now coming to nitrates. Nitrates, nitrates when given, we have discussed about nitrates in details when we studied ischemic drugs used in ischemia. The nitrates, they help to reduce the preload and the afterload. So when there is reduced afterload, there will. Yes. Any doubt?
Slide is not changing now.
Slide is not changing? Okay.
Now it has changed.
So till now all these slides you could not see anything?
No ma'am, we could see.
Is it the same for the whole class?
Ma'am, just 30th slide we couldn't see.
Is it changing now? Is it changing now?
Ma'am, it is on 31st slide. 30th. Yes ma'am.
Is it changing? अभी क्या दिख रहा है?
Drugs for CCF.
उसके बाद?
Nitrates in CCF.
Let me then let me continue. Now abhi bhi if you cannot, can you see the next slide? Diuretics. ये दिख रहा है? Diuretics. Can you see?
Yes ma'am.
Yes ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So there may be some momentarily connectivity issue because now I have logged in from my phone hotspot. So maybe that is disturbing because my Wi-Fi is down. So before any further disturbance occurs, I just want to give you a brief idea as to you have an idea of all the drugs which are used. Till now we have discussed cardiac glycosides, we have discussed dopamine, dobutamine and the phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors. But remember all these, the cardiac glycosides, the phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors, dopamine, dobutamine, they all are in one heading, that is inotrope. Okay. Now we need to know about the vasodilators. We discussed about the vasodilators, which you have already discussed in the previous lectures. So I'm not going into the details. And now you come to diuretics, because diuretics have a very, very important role in heart failure. Because in heart failure, the main symptom and the main the problem that the patient presents with is congestive symptoms, shortness of breath, breathing problem. These are all because of congestive symptoms, pulmonary edema, chest congestion, and so one has to one gets immediate relief when these congestive symptoms are relieved. And here the diuretics, they play a very important role because they cause loss of salt and water. So they will reduce this volume overload by decreasing the extracellular volume, and they also to reduce the venous return and hence the preload. So instant effect, or you can say quickest effect is reached by the high ceiling diuretics. We have discussed diuretics in detail in the first lecture. So it was discussed. So it is presumed that you know कि loop diuretics कहाँ का, they act the ascending limb of Henle, and bumetanide is most effective and commonly used. In mild cases of heart failure, thiazides are used. But we have to always keep in mind the adverse effects. That is the loop diuretic. What happened? I hope it's all good. I guess many of you are not on mute. So that is why when you're speaking, I can hear it. Please, I request all of you to be on mute. Unless there is problem with the audio or the video. So when prescribing the side effects. Now potassium sparing diuretics, they help to combat or to take care of the hypokalemia, which is very often the side effect of loop diuretics and thiazide diuretics. Their main problem is hyponatremia, hypokalemia. So to combat that, potassium sparing diuretics can be used. But when potassium sparing diuretics are used in combination with drugs like ACE inhibitors, which cause hyperkalemia, then you have to be very, very cautious. So another important question which is very often asked is the role of or the therapeutic status of spironolactone in heart failure. This is an independent question, not along with ACE inhibitors. Role of spironolactone or say candrinone or any other potassium sparing diuretic can be given as a therapeutic status question. Role of this potassium sparing diuretic in heart failure. So here you have to, apart from the diuretic action, you have to write about the aldosterone inhibition it causes. It minimizes the potassium loss because it is a potassium sparing diuretics. Here you have to explain the site of action, that is the distal convoluting tubule and the collecting duct. And you have to also emphasize on the aldosterone inhibition, whereby it prevents the sodium and water retention. It also enhances the endothelial it also helps to check the endothelial dysfunction and to some extent the cardiac remodeling, that is myocardial fibrosis. So spironolactone is an important drug in the treatment of heart failure. So this is again one important question very often asked. Spironolactone can be given in combination cautiously with ACE inhibitors or ARBs. It can be added to loop diuretics to enhance diuresis and to make up for that potassium loss. See, wherein we have to be cautious with ACE inhibitors and spironolactone. On the other hand, spironolactone can be added to loop diuretic like furosemide to enhance diuresis. And in that case, we don't have to worry about hyperkalemia, because loop diuresis, they cause hypokalemia, hyponatremia. So if you're adding spironolactone to increase the efficacy in the heart failure patients, so it is to the advantage because it helps to combat the hypokalemia by sparing the potassium loss. So it improves. Now coming to the other group. So we have discussed till now the inotropes. We have discussed the diuretic, vasodilators. Now we come to beta blockers. Now beta blockers, say if you remember that flowchart I had shown, not the flowchart rather, it is the graph. Remember graph of digoxin, this one. Is this visible? Stroke volume by end diastolic ventricular pressure.
No, ma'am.
No,
Is it
ma'am.
visible?
No, ma'am.
Oh, it is not. So that means my slides are not going back. It is only moving forward.
I'm right now it is on digoxin toxicity treatment. Now the graph.
Yes, ma'am. It's visible now.
Now,
No, ma'am.
can
It's
you
gone
see a
back to
graph?
the.
I just wanted to highlight a graph which I had shown, stroke volume over end diastolic ventricular pressure, wherein I had shown that with the increase in the ventricular pressure, the stroke volume increases in a normal heart. But when the heart is failing, with the increase in the ventricular pressure, the stroke volume does not. Okay, so in such a case, what happens is that the compensatory mechanisms, they try to make up for it by increased sympathetic activity, by increasing the heart rate and the increasing the cardiac output. They try to make up for the fall in BP. They try to make up for the the stroke volume. So there is compensatory sympathetic overactivity, which to some extent does increase fraction to some extent. Now, if this sympathetic activity is also lost, then it can be to some extent we had. So, is this slide of beta blockers visible now?
No, ma'am,
Is the
it's
slide
still on the
visible?
graph. There must be network lag.
Yes, I think there is a few seconds lag. So, beta blockers we have discussed when we had studied antihypertensive drugs and also I think drugs in ischemia. So, beta blockers, they'll come time and again because they help to reduce the work done by the heart by reducing the myocardial oxygen demand. So they will act beta because they will act primarily by inhibiting the beta 1 receptors of the heart. So one has to remember, if beta receptors are blocked for a long time, then there occurs upregulation of the receptors. So after all, what we are doing is we are blocking the catecholamines, that is the adrenaline and noradrenaline of which are normally circulating in the body, from acting on the beta receptors by blocking them. So when the beta receptors remain blocked, then there occurs upregulation of these receptors, increasing the sensitivity of the beta receptors to the circulating catecholamines. Now that is the reason why if beta blockers are stopped suddenly if the patient becomes non-compliant and he stops taking beta blockers suddenly, so there occurs rebound hypertension. Why? This is because over a period of time when he was taking the beta blockers, then there had been slowly upregulation of the beta receptors in the body, and as a result of which there was increased sensitivity of the beta receptors, increased sensitivity of the catecholamines to the beta receptor, or the beta receptors to the catecholamines. So when suddenly there is stoppage, then the normally circulating catecholamines, they have suddenly too many receptors to act on, and there is rebound hypertension. You have already studied, I think you are already doing with these autonomic nervous system. If not, you will be doing soon. So you will learn about the sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, that the sympathetic nervous system has receptors alpha, beta. I hope that is done. Yes?
Yes,
Yes,
madam.
ma'am.
Nervous system. Okay, okay. So you are clear with this concept. So that means you also know about upregulation, downregulation of receptors, and how the sensitivity increases in upregulation and the sensitivity decreases in downregulation of receptors. Now, beta receptors, they also have anti-arrhythmic properties and antioxidant properties, and beta receptors, they also have the property to prevent cardiac remodeling. So cardiac remodeling can be prevented by, this can be an all except questions for MCQs. Cardiac remodeling can be prevented by all except, say, can be AC inhibitors, ARBs, beta blockers, and diuretics. So the answer should be diuretics, because diuretics, they don't have a role in preventing cardiac. Yes, yes, you're right. Whoever answered. Beta blockers, they prevent cardiac remodeling. The AC inhibitors, ARBs, they prevent. So to some extent, spironolactone also helps. So beta blockers, you see this picture shows that when there is heart failure, there is decrease in cardiac contractility. So there is decrease in the peripheral perfusion. When there is decrease in peripheral perfusion, then there is reflex sympathetic activation. ठीक है? When peripheral perfusion fall करता है, तो there will be decrease in the BP, and this stimulates sympathetic overactivity, reflex sympathetic overactivity, which manifests increase in the beta adrenergic system. It will and this increased beta adrenergic system will cause apoptosis, necrosis, fibrosis, and hypertrophy. But this process is blocked by giving this beta blockers. So we are stopping this process of apoptosis, necrosis, fibrosis, and hypertrophy, which is called remodeling. And we are blocking the sympathetic activation. So beta blockers, hence if you are asked role of beta blockers, you have to write the positive effect. You have to write the positive. So we have to start the beta blockers at a low dose, and we have to monitor for bradycardia, because beta blockers, they should not be given if the patient is in some bradycardia. So one has to start with a low dose. Drugs like carvedilol and metoprolol are commonly used. And now this is also a question. Justify the use of carvedilol or metoprolol in heart failure. Now, some other drugs
They are
like
selective.
neseritide. Yes? I didn't hear you.
No, ma'am, I was just mentioning that metoprolol is beta selective and carvedilol is a combined selective blocker.
Yes, yes, yes. But they both have a role. Okay. Now coming to now we have covered all the important drugs. Now just sometimes, since it is a newer drug, the brain natriuretic peptides, they have now found some new use, that recombinant brain natriuretic peptides like neseritide, they are being used nowadays. They are being tried by IV infusion to relieve the dyspnea in refractory cases of heart failure. See, since the route is IV and since it is very costly, so it is less used, but only in cases of refractory congestive heart failure it is being used, and it enhances the salt and water excretion by acting as a potent vasodilator. So the profile of neseritide can be said to be very similar to that of GTN, glyceryl trinitrate. That is, it also reduces the preload. Okay, so though it is it has found newfound use, yet it is not used as a monotherapy. It is generally used in combination with other drugs of the standard drug. So it is worth that you remember this name. The natriuretic peptides, they are the new area of research in pharmacology of heart failure, of which there are different types of natriuretic peptides: atrial natriuretic peptide, brain natriuretic peptide. So this nesiritide is a BNP, endogenous brain natriuretic peptide. So there are some side effects, some reports of renal damage and death, some reports of causing dangerous hypotension, which has restricted its use. Okay, so now there are newer drugs which are being engineered or being discovered, modulating this natriuretic peptide symptoms. But and the new drug, another new drug is neprilysin inhibitors. So neprilysin inhibitors like sacubitril, it is the recent one, which is, I think it has been included in the book also now. KDT and in Dr. KK Sharma's book, I think sacubitril is given, but it is also not given in monotherapy, it is given in combination. Now, drugs like vasopressin receptor antagonists. Remember when we studied about diuretics and antidiuretics, we had studied a bit about the vasopressin receptors, the V1 and V2 receptors. So drugs like Vaptans, mainly the tolvaptan, convivaptans, they are orally active vasopressin, that is V2 receptor antagonists, that were introduced for the correction of the syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion, SIAD syndrome. They had been launched, or they had come into the market for this purpose. But then it was found that they were quite useful in very serious cases of congestive heart failure as well. So later on, clinical trials were tried wherein CHF patients who were suffering from hyponatremia, when they were treated with tolvaptan, they improved, restoring their sodium levels and the symptoms of dyspnea. So tolvaptan, by acting as a V2 antagonist, it was found to be effective in heart failure as well. So these are some of the new drugs which you can keep in mind. Now remember, don't highlight too much on these newer drugs. We will not ask these newer drugs as a long question. We will prefer not to ask these as short notes. Okay, but these are important for your viva. When we expect one-liners, we can ask you like this: have you heard the name of nesiritide? If you say no, ma'am, we won't ask you any further. But if you said yes, then we might ask you, what is it? BNP. Do you know any other drug? Do you know its mechanism? Is it given in monotherapy? So that it is useful for your viva, and when you're answering very well, to be very honest, only then we ask these questions. So to conclude now, that the AC inhibitors, they are very, very important drugs for the treatment of congestive heart failures. Beta blockers, they are used, but one has to be very judicious in its use, in mild to moderate, because we have to keep in mind that we should not block the normal sympathetic activity or the normal compensatory activity when the body is trying to normally combat the heart failure. In that case, beta blockers should not be given. Then the role of diuretics and digoxin also is very useful. So when you are asked, say, an LQ, classify drugs in heart failure, so I would always suggest that I think in your textbooks it is given that if you classify the drugs in heart failure as drugs causing relief of congestive symptoms or low output symptoms, and drugs which cause arrest of disease progression and prolong of survival. This classification will be useful for you even when you write the management, when you're writing the management of heart failure. How would you manage a case? So you can also classify the drugs in these two broad headings: relief of congestive symptoms. Now when the low output symptoms and the relief of congestive symptoms, so obviously the drugs you will give will be to increase the cardiac outputs, like the inotropic drugs. So inotropic drugs में आपके आ जाएंगे glycosides, cardiac glycosides like digoxin, then dobutamine, dopamine, and the amrinone and milrinone, which are the phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors. Then congestive symptoms will be relieved by vasodilators. Vasodilators are the AC inhibitors, angiotensin receptor antagonists, hydralazine, nitrates, nitroprusside. And cardiac performance is enhanced by reducing the oxygen demand, that is beta blockers. And drugs which arrest the disease progression, that means drugs which prevent cardiac remodeling, which is the outcome of heart failure. So here again, the AC inhibitors, ARBs, beta blockers, and the aldosterone antagonists. So if you classify like this, in a nutshell, you will be able to revise heart failure in short. So that is all about heart failure. So this is what I had to conclude today. So heart failure is an important topic. You should revise. Pay attention to digoxin. Digoxin is not used nowadays. Why? Because of its side effects. Because it has certain very important side effects like visual disturbances, potentially fatal arrhythmias, and it causes bradycardia. So it causes gynecomastia. So all these side effects, so it has slowly lost its use. We use other inotropes, and we use the diuretics, we use vasodilators, and we use drugs to arrest the progression of the disease as well. So that is all for this. I hope I have been able to clarify and believe me, for the treatment of heart failure, if you remember this much, it will be sufficient. So try to understand the pathophysiology, try to remember the basic mechanism of these drugs. Don't go too much into the details of the molecular mechanisms, because after all you will be asked 2 marks, questions of 2 marks or 3 marks. So you should know the mechanism, you should understand the concept, so that when you're answering, you just don't simply mug up. You understand the concept and then you answer. So read in detail about digoxin, read in detail about the other inotropic drugs, about diuretics. The role of diuretics in heart failure is very important. Read about the vasodilators, but vasodilators, most of them you will have already covered in the other lectures, like drugs on the renin-angiotensin system, you will have already dealt with AC inhibitors. Then drugs in ischemia, you will have already studied nitrates. So those drugs will have been already covered. Then you study the role of beta blockers in heart failure. And I hope I have not missed out anything. That's it.
Ma'am, can you please show slide number 30 that was missed to display due to network?
Yes, I can't hear you. Yes, slide
Ma'am,
number?
can you please show slide number 30.
30. Yes.
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
So I hope it is clear. So I would like to know what are the other topics that has been completed in pharmacology till now? Yes? Meanwhile, I'll download the attendance. So don't leave any one of you until I download the attendance. What are the other topics that have been covered in pharmacology?
Ma'am, Hemat, and I think after this class, cardio is also completed, and ANS is done, autocoids is done, and we've also done a muscle relaxant, which was there in PNS. And yeah, I think that's it for now.
Ma'am,
So quite a
respiration.
bit. Yes.
Ma'am, respiration has also been done, and even the diuretics part in renal.
Yes,
I didn't hear you. What is done?
Ma'am, respiration.
Oh, respiratory system. Okay, cough and bronchial asthma. Yeah. So just tell me, since this is the competency-based curriculum now, are you keeping a track of the competencies being covered? Yes.
Not exactly.
How did you do in your previous prof, like when you in your first and second semester, as and when the topics were being covered, were you keeping a track of the competencies that get covered?
Ma'am,
Like
for that, ma'am, we have to keep the record only for practicals, ma'am, not for theory class, I think.
okay.
But ma'am,
No,
for theory also we have.
we are definitely keeping a record, because whenever we are taking a lecture, like these two lectures, this was the competency lecture, mechanism of action, doses, side effects of drugs used in heart failure. The previous lecture before that was mechanism of action, doses, side effects, uses, indications, contraindications of drugs used in ischemic heart diseases, and I think there was myocardial infarction and peripheral vascular disease. So that was the whole competency. So we break up the competency into certain learning objectives, and then we cover those objectives over the lecture. Either a single lecture is sometimes enough, or sometimes two lectures we have to take. So I guess we are almost done with CVS. If at all, I think one competency may be left. I think that is drugs used in arrhythmia, cardiac arrhythmia. I think that can be left, which will be discussed, I think,
yes.
in the coming lecture. But otherwise, CVS cardiovascular system is more or less complete. So you know why I am saying this is that CVS is one of the very important the systems in systemic pharmacology. Now you will, I think, CVS, after CVS you will be studying CNS, central nervous system. Then we will proceed with endocrine system, endocrine pharmacology. Then you will progress to chemotherapy as an antibiotic chemotherapy. Cancer chemotherapy also you will study, but that is a small part. So if you have covered CVS, then you have almost covered half of pharmacology, because it is presumed that when you are studying CVS, you have already studied general pharmacology and autonomic nervous system and autocoids, because without studying these, you won't understand CVS. So almost half of pharmacology is done. So what all topics are being taught, please revise, and please keep in mind the questions which we are time and again we are stressing during the lecture, because these are the questions which are very often asked. So when you revise, you keep in mind the questions which I said are very commonly, the type of questions, because now you will be introduced to a different type of questioning. You will be given long questions, you will be given short notes, but you will be also be asked explain wise. You will be also be asked explain the therapeutic status of. This is only peculiar to pharmacology, that you ask the therapeutic status of a particular drug. So you have to study keeping these things in mind. Okay, so your attendance has been downloaded. So I guess this is the end. So, so thank you very much. Have a good day. And yes, if you have any questions, you can email me.